Mamba is the tallest, fastest, and longest coaster at Worlds of Fun. This Morgan Hypercoaster dominates the park's skyline with its hulking out and back layout. But does this coaster ride as good as it looks? Find out in this review of Mamba. Morgan Manufacturing would only build 8 different roller coasters, but their portfolio includes 6 different mega coasters. The first would be Wild Thing at Valley Fair in 1996. Cedar Fair was so happy with this hypercoaster that they installed similar rides across the chain over the next 2 years. Dorney Park received Steel Force in 1997, and Worlds of Fun received Mamba in 1998. Interestingly, these are 3 of the Cedar Fair parks with the longest coaster droughts now, but that may purely be a coincidence, because in the late 1990s, Cedar Fair clearly thought these properties were worth investing in. These rides cost roughly $10 million each. This trio of Morgan Hypers is the target of a lot of criticism from coaster enthusiasts. I will defend Steel Force. That is a great hypercoaster. If you've seen my review for that one, you'll know that one has airtime start to finish. Wild Thing is a bit of a disappointment. It starts okay, but the mid-course kills the return run. And Mamba, well, that one's a wild card, but I'll get to that. Mamba runs along the southern perimeter of Worlds of Fun. Its giant camelbacks and red track look great. It's the ride you see when you approach Worlds of Fun, and you can see it from almost anywhere in the park. The coaster isn't themed, but I do like the scaly green coloring on the trains, and the ride's logo looks cool too. Plus, the ride has its own entry plaza, eerily reminiscent of Steel Force's. Mamba has always been a walk-on for me, and 2 of those visits took place on holiday weekends. Maybe I've just gotten lucky, but it also is a capacity monster. This coaster has 3 trains, but I've only seen 2 in use at once. Each train holds up to 36 riders, since the train is comprised of 6 cars, each seating 6 people. It also helps this ride is pretty easy to check. You have a seatbelt and a really loose lap bar. It is shocking how much room you get in a coaster of this scale. Even on the lowest setting, I still have a few inches of room between my lap and the restraint. That is unheard of for a hypercoaster. This maximizes the airtime that Mamba does have. Morgan trains are pretty bulky though, and they're just not as open as the rolling stock and other hypercoasters, but those minimalistic restraints make the trains for me. I have a slight preference for the back on Mamba, as the back has the superior first half. However, the front has the superior sense of speed, so I usually split my rides evenly. Once dispatched, Mamba ascends the 205-foot or 62-meter tall lift hill. It takes a while to get to the top, so you have plenty of time to take in the view of the entire park on your right. Once at the top, you slowly creep over the crest. And that crest is pretty darn large. Morgan Hypers always seem to have funky drops, but I do like them. So while the airtime is a bit delayed, the train has quite a bit of steam by the time it reaches the ride's max angle of descent of 66 degrees, so if you're in the back cars, you get some good sustained floater airtime. Now, because of those bulky trains, you don't necessarily feel all of Mamba's 75 miles per hour or 121 kilometers per hour of speed. But the ride is super smooth even after 2.5 decades of operation. The second hill is a massive 184-foot or 56-meter tall camelback. You do slow down considerably at the top, but the front still gets sustained airtime. It's just weak in strength. However, the back essentially gets a second first drop due to the sheer size of this element. You get another dose of nice sustained floater airtime. The entry into the far turnaround is a bit weird. You basically have half a camelback, so those up front levitate out of their seat. At the top, the hill oddly levels off and has this brief section of straight track. It looks really strange. You then transition into this massive 580-degree helix. It starts with a large 180-degree drop, and then you have this awesome low-to-the-ground turn. It pulls decent positive Gs, and you have an extended series of head choppers with all the supports. And those head choppers are super effective because you're whizzing past them pretty quickly. The helix ends in this peculiar straightaway with a kink in it. This little bump delivers an abrupt pop of airtime. You then twist to the left, getting some laterals, and then you rise into the mid-course brake run. And if you're up front, you'll get some good airtime into this element. Now, this is the part that can make or break Mamba. In 2018, the midcourse definitely slowed the train down, but not enough to ruin the airtime. I got a strong burst of airtime on the midcourse drop in the back, and then the bunny hills rapidly switched from pops of floater airtime to some positive Gs. But in 2020, the midcourse was biting harder than Mike Tyson. No matter where you were in the park, you could hear those trim brakes screeching anytime a train was passing through. That negated what should have been an enjoyable return run. And most footage I've seen over the past 3 years has shown Mamba running like this, so I don't think it was an isolated incident for me. In 2020, I got 0 airtime on the return run, and that included the previously awesome drop off the midcourse. That is how much speed was lost. The back had 0 airtime on the entire return run, while the front maybe had a weak pop or two. And that's a shame because there are 4 bunny hills in a row, followed by a double up, so there are plenty of opportunities for airtime. You then coast into the brake run, ending the 5,600 foot or 1,700 meter long coaster. So what would I rate Mamba? I would give this hypercoaster a 6 out of 10 based on how it's been riding the past few seasons. Mamba has a great first half. The first few hills have nice floater airtime, and that turnaround helix is wonderful between the positive Gs, near misses, and surprise airtime pops. But the midcourse trim just dooms that second half. Mamba is still a fun coaster primarily for that first half, but it just can't compete with most other hypercoasters out there that offer superior senses of speed, more power, and a more well-rounded ride experience. So those are my thoughts on Mamba. What are your thoughts on this Morgan hypercoaster? How do you think it compares to the others out there? Let me know your thoughts on this ride down in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a like, and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canobie Coaster. Thanks for watching.